Hello, everybody, and accept my special greetings. Um, Welcome to the lesson or the course, a practicum or practical teaching, which is again one of the important courses because, as you know, here you try to link or bridge the gap between theory and practice. You have learned many things about theoretically on actually language teaching. You learn what are different methods, different strategies and styles of language teaching or techniques of language teaching. But here you want to know, you want to actually observe, and you want to reflect on your understanding and also your own performance and practices of actual teaching in language classes. Up to now, you have learned many things about language teaching and learning, how to teach, whether different methods, brand name methods, or teacher method, teacher practice. But here, the purpose is to provide you the chance, the opportunity, and the space to inquire into the actual practices of language teaching. Not only you try to observe, you try to see what happens in a real classroom, but you reflect on your own classes, your own ways of teaching, your own practices, or your own trends, and also your own understanding these actual teaching classes. If you remember, in the previous semester, in the first semester, in the course, the principles and methods of language teaching, I classified language teaching methods into two classes: brand names methods, or popular and well-known methods, which I said that they are outdated. But the other one, the method the concept of method refers to actual teaching practices, actually actions taken by the teachers in real classes and in actual classes. So today we are in this course today and other sessions, we are going to review, observe, and reflect of, inquire into actual teaching practices. What practices are of high quality, are most influential, are beneficial to students' learning, to classroom atmosphere, to teacher learning, and things like that, to are at the service of the very goal of education, which is helping students become successful citizens, independent learners, autonomous learners, learners able to learn academically, to be socially independent, to be able to independently work and interdependently cooperate and collaborate with others. So I have inserted some lines on the goals and objectives of this course. Here, offering a space for student teachers. You are student teachers. It means that some of you are teachers, and here let me say congratulations to Mrs. Purmir. Actually, she's now a teacher, a real teacher, employed in the Ministry of Education. Congratulations, and I wish you luck and best fortune be with you. And all of you have the experience of teaching, and so you are familiar with teaching. It means that you have the identities of teachers, whether you're employed or not employed. Okay, it makes no difference, but you have pre-teaching identities, or now you have the identities of teacher. So all of you are teacher learners or student teachers. It means that simultaneously that you teach, you're learners of teaching. You learn teaching, not about teaching. You learn the very concept and act of teaching. So your purpose here is to give you space to observe and reflect on. So, to observe what? You observe the popular teaching practices, you see successful teaching practices or common teaching practices. The purpose is not here to study some theoretical points or some theoretical ideas on language teaching. This should be done this way and that should be done that way. No. Here we actually analyze, observe. First we observe. Observe is a scientific term. It means that to be critical, to critically see something, to critically watch something and understand something, to explore something. So you observe teaching practices. For example, the teaching activity of one of the famous teachers, international teachers. Then we will analyze what strategies are used by those teachers, why they have used those strategies, techniques, why they have done those moves, what happened when they have done those, what were the relationship with their teachers, what trends were actually used by those teachers, why do they teach, for example, reading that way, why do they teach writing that way, are other alternatives or other options. So after observing and also critically reviewing, thinking about the activities by those teachers, international and famous teachers, successful teaching practices, then you reflect on your own teaching practices. Okay, so then you reflect on your own activities. So you can say that, okay, if I were that teacher, I would actually teach that way. And I have always taught this way, so my teaching was not qualified, or my teaching was qualified. I used a better option than the successful teacher. So there is a yardstick, there is something that you can compare and contrast your teaching with the teaching activity of those teachers. So some of you may say that, okay, I haven't taught those courses or those topics. I do not have the experience of teaching those things, but you are now teachers. Okay, you have something in your mind about teaching, how teaching those things. So you can compare the teaching activity of those teachers with your plan for teaching next time in real life classes. Help them to make transition from theoretical world to the real world. So you may have something in your mind, and you may think something about something theoretically. So then you see that, you observe that in the real world of classroom teaching. So a real world classroom teaching actually used by those teachers, and also what you do in your own classes, or what you're going to do in your future teaching classes. So you observe and inquire into sample teaching activities, provide the student teachers to reflect on and understand their own theories and practices. So when you see those teachers, observe those teachers, when you think about or think of those practices, then you can actually reflect on your own theories. You have some theories in your mind, you have some plans in your mind. Okay, so you have this space, the opportunity to think about yourselves, your theories, your theory of teaching, and also your teaching practices. They also find and decide a variety of skills. Let me insert all here. And activities, yes. that they can use to improve their own practices. The objectives of the course, yes, of here include familiarizing student teachers with different types of teaching. You are a student teachers, you see, you observe, you actually watch some movies, and you see different types of teaching by famous international and native like teachers. You are familiar with classroom management. Okay, sometimes you may see how classroom is managed by the teachers, whether the appropriate classroom behaviors. Then classroom feedbacks, how teachers try to provide students with feedback, how teachers use classroom assessment, learning how technology can use to improve learning how technology can be used to improve classroom teaching. Yes, here let me delete. Okay, learning how to implement collaborative learning. So collaborative learning is very important. You can see these things in the sample teaching or teaching practices. Discussing effective and reflective teaching enhanced by classroom observation and teacher action research. Okay. If you think about these objectives, you can understand that you are learners of teaching. You are teachers, okay? You are practically, I am practically involved in language teaching, yes? But simultaneously, we are learners of teaching. There are different ways to learn teaching and about teaching. Whatever you have done up to now is learning about language, about teaching, language teaching. But now you observe and reflect, you understand the practice of teaching. Okay? So you see the practice of teaching. It is different from the concepts of teaching, theoretical information or ideas about teaching. Here you are given the space by watching and observing the videos. You are given the space to reflect on your own theories, of your own ideas, of your own activities, of your own plans, of your own practices and performance. So reflection and inquiry into your own theories, understandings, performance and activities is of the primary importance in this course. So you watch and you learn from others, then you compare and contrast, you think about, you give a second thought to your own understandings, your teacher's understanding, your colleagues' understandings and activities. Then you can actually internalize your learning. You can say that, okay, for teaching vocabulary, I did this. For classroom management, I did this. And there are some alternatives. By watching, by observing the teaching practices of famous teachers, I learned that there are some other alternatives. So, inquiry into teaching practices and reflection on teaching practices are actually of the significance in this course. Actually, I try to analyze and ask you to analyze teaching practices, and I ask you to think about them and reflect on your own actual theories and practices. Here again, I provided you with a weekly schedule in which for our actually objectives and the lessons for each session is specified. Course introduction, pointing out the objectives over here. Actually, I tried to introduce the course and I said that this is called practicum. Practicum means that We have a course that the purpose of the course is to help you to bridge the gap between theory, whatever you have learned, and practice, and you can here actually understand what happens if you try to apply and employ the theoretical ideas or information you have learned about actually teaching and learning in actual teaching classroom. What happens in real classroom? You become realistics, okay, and you try to consider reality as of classroom teaching. Realities of classroom teaching is different from the idealistic ideas in the textbooks, in articles, not articles, but usually in textbooks. In second session, learning from observation and through reflection, I try to actually tell you that as language teachers, as you are teacher learners, you're student teachers, and I am also a student teacher, and we should observe and we should reflect on our teaching practice. When we observe others, then we can reflect on our own teaching practices and theories, and we can learn from understanding our own cognitions, then we can change it. Okay, the point is that here, if you want to learn something, you need to change your understanding. You need to change your practices. So first of all, you need to understand your understanding and your practice. Then you can replace it with new understanding and new practice. Okay, in this third session, we observe and analyze actual teaching practices. Okay, then you write a report on your observation and what you have analyzed. So, for example, you observe. I try to show you how to do that. For example, you see that the teacher actually used warm-up and how he or she used warm-up. Then what skills or techniques or strategies actually was used by the teacher, and what language or discourse was used by the teacher. So you observe and you analyze and you write down that these strategies, these skills, and this actually I do jointly with you, and I try to show you how to observe, what to analyze, and actually what classification or categories should be used for your analysis. Then in the next session, we discuss the teaching activities actually used by that teacher. Again, we have another analysis and your report. Then in the next session, we discuss the teaching activities you will discuss. Then we have again a new observation of a new teaching practice by a famous teacher. Then we discuss the challenges of actual teaching in Iranian ILTO context. So by observing the teaching practices, it's possible to remember some of teaching challenges in your own classes or Iranian classes as language teachers and language learners you experienced. So we discuss those points. Again, we observe, again we observe, again we observe. And by observing and considering your reporting, we discuss different points actually we have observed and we have seen in our classroom analysis. Then you try to self-reflect on one's own teaching. Then you will talk about your own teaching or your own plan of teaching. So if I was that teacher, I would do this one or that one, or this is good, I do this one, I use this strategy, I have this plan, and you try to reflect on your own understanding, your own cognition, and on your own practices. Reviewing the major points, we try to review the major point discussed so far in the previous sessions. And again, we discuss the major points that we have actually observed and reflected on, inquired into. It will be continued. And here there are some actually sources that you can use those sources. Okay. Dear teachers, the course was called Practicum. Practical refers to practical teaching. Practical teaching is an opportunity to help you bridge the gap between theory and practice, to think about the actual teaching practice in real classes, and to reflect on your own understanding, your own theories of teaching, being a teacher, and from observation of the other teachers' activities, other teachers' teaching practices, methods, styles and strategies and techniques, you have the opportunity to compare and contrast yours with those teachers, and you have the opportunity to revisit your understanding, your cognitions, performance, and practices. And in some actually, in many universities, they try to, for example, tell students or student teachers that you should provide feedback this way, or provide the feedback those way, or you assess this way. Actually, I do not want to do that, because I think that observation and also analysis and also reflection and also inquiry is one of the most important sources of actually learning. And I want to provide you and me with that space to observe and reflect and inquire into our own theories, practices, and performance. Here you can see the objectives again. Please study these objectives, think about them, and for the next session, please tell me about your first impression of this course, first impression of actual teaching practices. Again, you can use voice recordings, and you can share your ideas or your voices with us and tell us, okay, what are the most important points in actual teaching practices, and what are the challenges of teaching practices. For example, one of the teaching challenges is that there is a gap between what you have learned theoretically and actual teaching classes, or there is a gap or difference, space between theory and also reality and actual real teaching classes. So there may be these things. Please actually do not write, but prepare, supply voice recordings, and send me your voice recordings talking about the challenges or the topics of the issues of practical teaching. What you think that are important in practical teaching, and what are the challenges to practical teaching, especially practical teaching in Iranian L2 education. Then we'll have the opportunity to discuss the points you mentioned in your voice recordings, and I'll try to talk to you about the points you have mentioned. So I am waiting for your voice recordings, because for the next sessions we actually do not want to actually only focus on new ideas, but it's better to talk about ourselves, our own teaching, our own problems, our own challenges. Okay, thank you for your patience and for your listening. See you. Actually, it's not possible to see you, but you hear me next time. Bye until next session.